Okay, it's recording now. So to start out, we will go to the lower right quadrant. And the question for this quadrant is, what is important to all of you on the team about being a high-performing team? It says, remember that in the lower right quadrant, we are writing values, not behaviors. No one can see what you value. Only you know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important for myself, actually. I value just being very, very patient with my group members and accepting and supportive.
I also think that like honesty is important. Whether that's like if you can't get something done on time or you're having like, trouble with something, being honest with your group members and being able to talk it out with them is something I value.
I think add to that too, just communication. So being very clear with what's expected, and then, like you were saying, communicating if you're not able to get it done, and you need some assistance.
I also value just everyone's own opinions and just taking into consideration what everyone has said. I think that there's value, and I value just everything that team members say and put into the team.
Yeah, going off of what Cassidy and everyone else said, just being respectful towards each other as well. I think that's a big component of a high-performing team, of just being respectful of everybody's opinions and just hearing everyone out.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of jumping on that, I think having like open communication is also key.
I also think it's important too to be open and vulnerable and accepting of feedback, because some people might have more experience than you or different experiences. I think it's important to be open-minded with that.
I think also dividing work. I think we've done a really good job of that with this project, just making sure that there's division and that everybody has a part.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Definitely.
I think also just thinking about what we've done with this project is feedback and taking people's feedback as like a way to get better and not like necessarily personally.
Do we feel like we covered that quadrant? Does anyone have anything else to add?
I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's good too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next we will work on the lower left quadrant. The question here is, when you think about being a high-performing team, what thoughts or feelings show up or get in the way? It says to write thoughts in italics and our feelings in all caps.
So for me personally, I often will get insecure just because I sometimes feel like maybe I don't know what I'm doing, and that's just an insecurity that I have.
Understandable. I feel like also with me, it's like a lack of confidence in like knowing what we're doing exactly sometimes, because it is a fast-paced course. So like just not being on top of all the materials, I think I lack that confidence in it.
I think that sometimes my levels of stress sometimes can impact my work, and that sometimes I can just get so overwhelmed and stressed out by courses I'm taking, work, and life that could maybe impact my performance.
Sometimes I tend to think that the work that we produce for each other, because it's, grade dependent, that it's not going to be good enough, and that there might be resentment if there's some points lost somewhere, that we might hold resentment against that person who wrote that part.
I think sometimes too, with like depending on the question and how you interpret it, that especially when you're uploading it to like a Google Doc, that like when other people are reading it, you think you've missed the mark on it, kind of. So it kind of goes into that whole like confidence in your work.
Mm-hmm.
I found that there's times when I interpret something differently, but then I second guess myself. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how I'm going to express my question or my thought about that specific section.
I think sometimes too, like I know for me when I'm writing like a specific part for whatever I was assigned, I think like is what I'm trying to say clear enough as well, or if I'm getting like all the important parts and it's not just kind of the fluff of it, but it's really what we're getting at, or supposed to be getting at.
I also too think that I feel that sometimes we're rushing through assignments.
Yeah.
Like, because we're on a time constraint, so I feel like sometimes we just rush through and we don't fully comprehend what we're doing, or like, well, maybe I don't fully comprehend what I'm doing and what in my sections.
Mhm.
Like I feel rushed, or I just feel like I don't have enough time.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
For sure.
Okay, do we feel like we've said everything we need to say for that quadrant so far?
I think so.
Mhm.
So
All right, next is the upper left quadrant. The topic here is what do you do to keep away from or under the control of that bottom left stuff? These are behaviors that you do when you have the thoughts and feelings you described from the lower left, and that other team members or people outside your team might see you doing these things.
I
think-
will. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think just going over the materials beforehand, before the meeting, I would feel more confident, like in what I'm saying and like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So to move away from the bottom stuff, I agree with that. I often will stay silent just
Yeah.
to wait for somebody else to jump in.
Yeah.
That's something I definitely need to work on.
Like I do the same thing.
Or sometimes I avoid being the person to volunteer and step up because I don't feel confident. So I'm like, okay, surely somebody else knows
Yes.
what's going on better, and I'll
Mhm.
speak for them to speak. Yeah.
yeah, I agree with all that. Sometimes it's easier to kind of take a back seat just because out of fear of like, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about, just hoping someone else knows what they're talking about. But I feel like for the most part, everyone's the same kind of boat most of the time.
I forget that.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I usually ask questions first versus actually making a statement because I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I rather just ask a question and then see where everybody else stands first.
Hmm.
So would
Yeah.
that be moving towards then?
No, because I don't do anything to
Oh,
make the situation better. Like I feel like I don't contribute much.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't really say anything that I guess would be useful to ask the question.
I do that too. I always will ask a million questions
Yeah.
just to make it feel like I'm contributing something, but really it's just me
Yeah.
asking a million questions.
And sometimes like I find myself asking like the same question because just to get the clarification like 400 times to make sure.
And similar to what I was saying in the other quadrant, just taking more of a passive voice. So I might have a concern or a question about the way that something was done, but instead of just saying that I have that concern or I have that question, I try to phrase it more like passively instead of just like getting to the point.
Yeah, instead of being direct about it.
Yes.
I think sometimes too, instead of asking the question, I tend to try to Google it or like really dig into the materials to see, oh, what did I miss that's already there that I'm not getting? Because half the time I'm like, oh, it's definitely in there. I'm just missing it. So I think that's part of it.
All right, well, we finish up. Does anyone else have anything to add to this section?
I don't.
Okay.
Good.
All right, moving on to the upper right quadrant, the topic here, what could you as a team be seen doing to move towards who or what is important? These are behaviors or actions someone else could see you doing if you are acting in accordance with the value you named in the lower right quadrant.
I guess just one thing done is like asking for help or clarification when we need it instead of just kind of sitting back and feeling insecure or like you can't speak up or anything is one thing that we could do. Just saying like, hey guys, like I really need help with this. I'm not understanding it, and voicing our opinions and just voicing.
Right.
I think sometimes too, like we always want to go through like our professor to make sure we have the correct answer, which like isn't a bad thing, which I would do anyway. But I think sometimes we like second guess ourselves because we're like, oh, we'll just ask just to make sure, even though we've been right on most of that.
I also think for me, just because I am so insecure with my ideas, I like to introduce a phrase to give myself an out. So, for example, I've started now when I share new ideas to say, okay, I had this new idea. I'm not sure if it's going to be a good one, but here it is. And then, so that's my way of being vulnerable. And I recognize already, like, okay, it might not be the best, but I'm going to share it anyway.
I think that the feedback that we provided each other so far has been quality feedback. It's been constructive, but also complimentary. I think that's in line with our values for the group.
Yes, I agree.
Like going off the feedback, I think reading the feedback and like kind of digesting it and making those changes and like asking questions about those changes if that's what like the other person really meant.
And also I think like being open-minded, like we said in our values, like being receptive to those changes and that people may have something that may make it a little bit better or just tweak it so it's a little bit more clear. I think that's good too.
I also think that our division of work was in line with our values. Having that group sign-up sheet as an assignment kind of made sure that we were dividing things and that everybody was taking on sections. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add for any of the quadrants?
Not that I know of.
I think it looks good.
Okay, great job, guys. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.